Hello guys, Tom here from Team Axion now. I recently came 16th at GP Utrecht piloting Mardu vehicles and I was on coverage a few times throughout the day. I'm going to be watching back one of those games today to analyze the plays that I made, whether they were good, bad, or whether there's any places where I could have done something differently that would have been better. Uh, the match that I'm watching is my round 12 match against Danny DeRoy on Jeskai Healy, and we joined the game with the match at 1-1 and the live totals at 20 to 16. As you can see, I'm slightly behind here as my opponent controls a bigger board than I do with 3 creatures to my lonely 1. However, I do have a Gideon which is on a lonely 1 one loyalty, having been hit by my opponent's creatures. So my thought process is here is that I need to keep my Gideon alive, and to do so I basically don't mind trading the resource that I have available to me. So in my hand I have a veteran motorist which I'm going to cast shortly, and I see a Gideon and another spell. I keep the Gideon on top here because I'm fearing that my Gideon is probably going to be dying soon. Because if my opponent has removal spells, which I'm expecting the Jeskai Sahili deck to have, then there's not really much I can do to stop him just running over and killing my Gideon. The first interesting decision point comes up in my opponent's next combat step, as you will see. He attacks with both his Whirl of Virtuosos and a Thopter token at my Gideon. Now, I have the option here to crew my Heart of Kiran to also block, either with the Gideon by removing a loyalty counter, or by using my veteran motorist. I elected to do neither here for 2 reasons. Firstly, my opponents let me block if I choose to block and have no effects. So this means that I'm safe from him trying to remove a blocker mid-combat, which means I can almost guarantee my Gideon stays alive as long as he doesn't have shock. And obviously if he has shock, there's no reason why he would attack my Gideon in the first place. The second reason is if I crew my heart with the Gideon, my Gideon goes to 1, which means that if he has any removal spell from my Heart of Kiran, which includes Heart and Lightning here, then my Gideon dies. And if I crew with a veteran motorist, the same applies because he gets to remove one of the blockers that I had available, and now his Whirl of Virtuoso also gets through. So I make the slightly less advantageous but safer play by blocking the 2 creatures I have available already, and also get to trade. But then Danny also follows up with another virtually 2 creatures with the Wild Virtuoso and the 3 only, allowing him to make a Thopter. My draw here is the Gideon, which I put on top, which I, at this point in time, kind of think maybe was a mistake because I can't really get both the Gideon and Chandra out of my hand in any timely fashion to try and defend themselves. Chandra in particular in this situation is quite poor at defending herself, so if my Heart of Kiran should somehow die, I actually have very few things to protect my Planeswalkers with. So I make the Chandra here because obviously I can't make the Gideon, and well, not without losing the one that's already on the table, and I'm still trying to waste my opponent's resources trying to get him to get rid of the first one. And I'm still able to get in with the Gideon, and my opponent is still having to protect his life total because he's only on 11. Now this is the first bit of luck I get here with the Chandra Plus, because I actually get another blocker. If I didn't have this Fabian Inspector, then I think my Gideon would have likely died the following turn, because, well, he has 3 attackers, I only have 1 Heart of Kiran on the table to block with. I also think that my opponent makes a slight misplay here, because I don't think he needed to block with a Thopter token. He could have just blocked with the Wild Virtuoso and made another Thopter, and then the 2 in the air would force me to activate my Heart of Kiran, which I had previously shown that I'm reluctant to do, and that way he's got a better chance of getting rid of the Gideon. But but he makes a Doctor, blocks my Gideon to keep his life total slightly higher, and as a result, he can't pressure my Planeswalkers quite as well. So with two Planeswalkers on the table and half Kieran, I'm starting to look a little bit better off here. On the previous turn, I again didn't elected not to activate my half Kieran, still fearing removal. You'll see throughout this game that I'm very reluctant to attack with the half Kieran, because previous games I've seen Immolating Glare, which is exactly what Danny has in hand here. He casts this. He also resolved very few glimmers where he kept cards on top. He told me after the game he was actually flooding out quite hard, and you can see here his glimmer produced yet more lands, which to go with his Immolating Glare and I believe a Felidar Guardian, which was also stuck in his hand for a large portion of the game, as he couldn't play it onto a battlefield where Chandra's active without it being liable to die. At this point, Danny changes pace and he doesn't attack anymore, probably because he's worried that I might crew the Heart now to block, because I have the Chandra on the table also. But I feel like the sequence which I've played means that he probably could have attacked, but I guess he still has to also protect his own life total as a secondary thought to him. But now Gideon really excels, because he's able to just plus and abyss my opponent each turn, although Whirl of Virtuoso is a good counter to this, because all it takes is 3 energy to essentially fog Gideon per turn. My draw here is Painful Truths, and I plus Chandra, trying to work out whether I needed the extra mana to cast the Painful Truths rather than using up the mana on the table, because I'm trying to represent removal spells in case he does combo, as at this point that is probably the only way in which then he gets back into this game, as I have 2 active Planeswalkers. In the end, I like to just do the damage, because despite the fact that I want to preserve mana, Danny is also only on 11, so the 2 points of damage whittling him down was actually quite relevant. I cast Painful Truths here for 3, and I actually make a minor mistake here, I think, because I drew a Selfless Spirit, and on coverage here, the commentators said that I could just play this mountain and leave up Unlicensed Disintegration. So I do 2 things here wrong. Basically, by playing the Selfless Spirit, I somewhat signal I don't have this Unlicensed Disintegration, which allows Danny to freely go for it. But also, just not leaving up the mana if I had it, then is also bad. But I didn't have the removal spell in any case, so I felt like I wanted to put things on the table to try and finish this game as soon as possible before Danny gets to find a combo. As he's resolved 1 Glimmer, I had already clocked that he perhaps has 1 piece of combo plus the Immolating Glare, so it can't be that far off that he would get the combo, and I want to finish the game as soon as possible. So at this point, I actually kind of change pace a little bit as I start getting a little bit more aggro. This is helped by the fact that I have the Selfless Spirit, of course, because that means that I'm able to protect my half Kieran from any removal spells. So because I was on the try to kill my opponent as quickly as possible plan, this Scrappy Scoundrel was actually a difficult choice, but in the end I think I chose to do 2 damage because of the inevitability that my opponent will just continuously block down my 3/2 with his copious amounts of Whirl of Virtuosos and Man Lands and so on and so forth. Like a Wandering Female will just wall my scrap heap, so I might as well get the 2 points in whilst I can. This is another interesting turn, because my opponent's actually got a Torrential Gearhulk here, if I remember correctly, and he elects not to cast it. So you remember that I said in the last turn I didn't leave up mana to represent the Unlicensed Disintegration. So I'm not sure why, but Danny chooses to play around the Disintegration at this point, I believe, by not casting the Torrential Gearhulk, because he could quite easily cast this Gearhulk and block the Gideon for basically free, and then chump the half Kieran. But I guess he sees the Virtuosos as expendable at this point, so he just elects to chump with that instead. But the end step Torrential Gearhulk here doesn't really play around anything else other than this integration. I guess he gets to represent the counterspell, but I think if I've already forced through a Chandra and a Gideon, I'm not really concerned with the counter spells he may or may not have to counter any further spells, because the best two spells I have for this matchup are on the table. The third is probably also on the table in the form of Kyle Kieran. So at this point, my opponent has glimmered twice and still failed to find the second piece of his combo. He's also bottomed twice out of these, so he is getting a little bit unlucky. Because if he did have the combo and he probably is pressured enough that he would just go for it, as it were, then I wouldn't be able to interrupt it, because my hand is just, I believe, 2 Gideons. So the scry from earlier where I kept the Gideon on top actually came back to bite me a little bit. It's easy to say retrospectively that I maybe didn't need to top the Gideon, but it did look like at certain points that my initial Gideon would have died much sooner than this, and therefore I would have wanted the backup Gideon. So my opponent's got an interesting choice here. He goes with the Oath of Chandra. This is another decision point which looked a little bit strange on camera. So my Chandra is on 7, so I have the opportunity to ultimate her, which the coverage was going crazy for, and I think Matei Satokai was actually egging me on towards the end of the match to do so. But I have no actual intention of ultimating Chandra in this game unless she is on 8. And I don't think I would have had the opportunity to get her to 8 before her plus has already killed my opponent. So I actually have very little inclination to ultimate her. This is mainly because I've seen disallow out of these lists. I'm not sure I saw it in previous games, but definitely from Jeskai Sahili decks, they do tend to run some amount of disallow. And I don't want to just walk my Planeswalker into that and allow my opponent to get back into game that way. So I instead elect to crew with her loyalty rather than using Gideon's loyalty, and there's 2 reasons for this. Firstly, my opponent has played Shock, and he's shown me he plays multiple Shocks in his deck, so I don't want Gideon to just die to that now. Even though I have the backup, it does put me down back in terms of tempo and the momentum of the game. And also, the Oath of Chandra has a second line of text which says that when a Planeswalker comes into play, it deals 2 damage to me in my end step. So if he followed up with any Planeswalker, it would have meant the death of my Gideon if I chose to crew my Heart of Kiran. So this board state is actually starting to get a little bit sketchy for me, because my opponent's actually starting to draw a lot of cards and getting back the advantage that I had accrued over the last couple of turns because of the power of Glimmer of Genius. But fortunately, I draw the Avacyn here, I believe, to protect my Half Kirin on the next attack step. Again, my attack here is actually still a little bit odd, because it again leaves me exposed to the combo, but I hadn't been respecting the combo up to this point, because I figured that if Danny had it, he would have gone for it, which means that he doesn't have it and he still needs to top deck, and I need to finish the game before he top decks. And there's a trade-off between basically taking it too conservatively and allowing my opponent more draw steps, and also basically trying to speed up the game by being a little bit more dangerous so that he doesn't have those draw steps. And I think I played that relatively safe and not too poorly, but my draws definitely lined up quite well to help me here, because I follow up the Selfless Spirit with the Avacyn to protect my Heart Kirin. I'm still quite on edge at this point from my side, because I have basically left myself exposed again with no shock and no disintegration mana available. So if Danny drew the Sahili here, I would have no counter to his combo. But unfortunately for me, he doesn't draw the combo, and in fact his hand gets really awkward here, because he has a release the Gremlins with which to deal with the Heart of Kirin. But if he does this, I have the opportunity to crew my Heart of Kirin, so that it will trigger my Avacyn on upkeep, and this will deal 3 damage to him and allow Chandra to finish the job, and also means that he can't make Thopter tokens to chump my Avacyn either, so he has to deal with the 6/5 flyer as well as my Chandra, which I don't think any card in his deck was able to do outside of trying to win. And this is actually what he's asking the judge right now, whether Halkir and Crude would trigger the Avacyn, which clearly it would. So I think he's just explaining. He's just looking at what the flip side does and making sure it does 3 damage to him. So again, I think it's around this point that the coverage team was egging me on to try and finish the game with the emblem, but I actually elect not to, because the safer player is obviously to attack first, but we'll see that later. From Danny's side, he could have played the Guardian here to flicker the Torrential Gearhulk, but he just doesn't have anything in the graveyard either. His draws of multiple Wild Virtuosos actually probably came back to bite him, because it means that he had so few spells to actually play off, and it means that it reduces the potency of Torrential Gearhulk. Right, so we're in extra turns here, and we've both played quite not slowly per se, but definitely very deliberately to make sure that we didn't make any mistakes. And I think we both did this as it was quite a crucial point in the tournament, and it's understandable that you'd slow down to make sure that your thought processes were clear and not to make any major mistakes. So this is just basically the death throes of the match now, as Danny attempts to preserve his life total, but he still has to take 4 here from one of the 2 Serra Angels flying at him, which allows Chandra's uptick to finish him off regardless, unless he has the disallow, which he doesn't in this situation. And there we have it. I win the 3rd game of this match and move on to 12-1, but ultimately I wasn't able to convert and I lost in the winning end. Anyways, so that's a game analysis of one of the games that I played at GP Utrecht. Hopefully you enjoyed this, and hopefully there'll be more in the future. Thank you for watching. I'm Tom Law, signing off.